everybody, it's Caroline Coram from the Boom Review, and this is the weekly update. So I've just done an update for Telegram, and I thought that I would do it every week on an audio rather than the videos that I've been doing. They've been chewing up a huge amount of time, and the team and I have conferred, and we feel that we should go back to audio. It's much more personal. I can speak as if I'm in the room with you rather than spending hours labouring over everything looking perfect for a video. So the audio will still go on Rumble. It will go on all of the channels, and it will go on in video format as well, so that people on YouTube and Rumble can still listen to it. So what I'm going to do is divide up a lot of the work that I've been doing to date into two very specific sections. One section will be the everything in front of paywall section. That will have all of the updates, the alerts, the health stuff, the weather stuff, anything that I can put out quickly, that you need quickly, and that people can use to help themselves stay well. So all of that will be very timely. Nothing will be too long. It might have, a few seconds clip on the TikTok and Instagram, and just pictures and warnings, a sky alert warning on the rest of the channels, so X and Substack, etc. And usually, depending on how bad the threat is, I will cover all of the platforms immediately. Or if it's a little bit difficult to tell what the severity of the activity is going to be, I will just slowly trickle out what's going on so that people can kind of follow it as it's evolving. But if we think that a big attack is coming, that will go straight away onto all channels as quickly as possible. So the lightning, for example, that went on to most channels yesterday. Hopefully that way I can cover all the critical and essential bases. So that's the free part, and behind paywall on Substack, you're going to be treated to all of those cutting edge ideas, much more detail, much more explanation about why, how and when I think these things are happening. So it will be covering everything from the weather patterns, CO2, the ongoing war, politics, history, arsenic, of course, health, and seeing how all of those different areas interact with each other and slot in, because they do all interconnect. The more we go on with this research, the more we can see where those connections are. And it's not just necessarily with people, but also through events and the sequence of events. So we always look for patterns in things. And through this detailed research, the patterns rise to the surface and allow everybody to really get a better grip on exactly what is going on. The recent discoveries on the carbon dioxide element of climate change is something that we really need to expand on, but there's a lot of work that needs to go into explaining to people how I've come to this conclusion. I'm very excited about it. And if I can prove the theory and our observations back that up, then we will have a way to predict exactly when these storms are going to start, where they're likely to occur even before they happen, and exactly how the enemy is using the weather system and how we are combating them with countermeasures against these changes in the weather system. Keeping a strong division between the alert and update work and this detailed research work allows us to bring these slightly outlandish and new ideas to everyone else when we found a way of condensing it down into a few easily digestible nuggets of information backed up with proof. So I've got quite a lot in the pipeline, and these include more on the EU and why Nigel Farage so desperately wanted us out of it, and what else he was trying to achieve. I'll be looking at the convicted nurse Beverly Allett. There are quite a few similarities between the case of the children that she was said to have murdered in Grantham in 1991 and the case about Lucy Letby now. just taking a first pass at everything that was going on in the country around that time of the March and April in 1991, there are quite a few elements that say to me that there is a really strong chance something could have contributed to the deaths of these children in the just 2-month period that she was active on Ward 4, the children's ward in Grantham, which originally I thought was on the top floor, but that's actually the birthing suite of maternity, which is no longer active in Grantham. And Ward 4 may have been on the ground floor or the first and second. I can't find an old map, so I couldn't tell you exactly. I made that error in the Telegram update, so I apologise for that, guys. It seems like a really tiny detail, but it is actually really quite important. The other thing I was talking about, I know that we've got quite a bit of scattered lightning this weekend. It's very unpredictable, so do keep an eye on those charts and on any more warnings that I put out. There has been gassing, and that will be flowing into the wind stream. So if you are spending time outside, do be careful, because we are expecting that and the storms to produce irradiated particles that are a little bit more damaging than are seen on its own. And of course, you get the gamma radiation coming off the lightning as well. So I'm hoping, many of us seem to have colds at the moment, and I think that was part of countermeasures. So there was a lot of particulate matter in the air yesterday, and that's primed a cold in a lot of us. We're all sneezing and coughing a bit and feeling a bit bunged up, but that's good, because that's the immune system saying there's stuff in the air, I'm on it, and you get a good clear out. So you get a runny nose, upset tummy maybe, a little bit of a cough, and hopefully that will clean you enough to be able to cope with whatever's coming next. And what I've noticed is that the lightning and then the gassing and the lightning goes in waves. So if the lightning finishes and then the weather improves, then we'll have another load of gassing, and it will just go on like that. So it's only when we get these really dull periods where it's low cloud and a lot of rain that there is no activity in general, or the very little activity in terms of gassing and very little lightning. So stay tuned. I'm going to keep you updated every day. If there is something going on, you will know about it. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is health related, and this is my experience. So obviously I am not a doctor, and you should not take anything I say as medical advice. I am not medically trained. If you need medical advice, do go to your GP or health practitioner, whether they're alternative or traditional. So anyway, back to what I was going to tell you about. So I've been talking about poop. Now, we don't really like talking about our bowel habits very much in Britain or anywhere else, I don't think. But it is traditionally known, particularly in Chinese medicine, that the state of the bowel and the state of our general health is very much reflected in the state of our poop. So, for example, if you have pale poop, then that means that your liver is struggling a little bit. If you have very soft poop and the pale poop, then that is a sign that your gut is struggling along with your liver. If you have constipation, then that's a sign that there is an electrolyte imbalance in your body perhaps, and that you can't get enough water into your bowel to soften the stool enough to get it out of your bowel in time. Now, the thing about health is that it really does depend on everything that we're putting in being processed and coming out in a timely manner. So if things go through too quickly, we can't get enough nutrition from it. Or if things go through too slowly, then everything gets bunged up and things stop working. We end up in pain. You can end up in pain whether things are going fast or slow. I don't know whether you've had tummy gripes recently and upset tummies from all of the stuff flying around in the air. But that is just a classic signal that there are toxins in whatever you are eating or breathing in, and that your body wants to get rid of them pretty quickly. Let's take the example of the pale poop. Now, I had been eating a lot of oat flapjacks for the last year, and I thought they were delicious, and I'd changed my supplement regime to what I take now. I've talked about it before. I take taurine, ALA, magnesium glycinate, and the phosphate-containing electrolytes, and then I take zinc separately. So those are 5 basic things. 2 of them, the taurine and ALA, are meant to release and bind the arsenic and get that out of the body. And then the other stuff, the phosphates, the electrolytes and the zinc, they all replace what I've lost. I was happily enjoying my flapjacks, wondering why the colour of my poop was on the pale side, and also transit time was a little on the swift side. And this carried on for an entire year without changing. It didn't matter what I did. Things just stayed the same, and I did feel some pain in my liver area, the upper right quadrant, just underneath the ribs. So I decided, let's see if it is these amazing flapjacks and the other carbs based on grains that I was eating. And so I took them out of my diet. And my goodness, the change has been quite dramatic. The colour has gone back to a colour I don't think I've ever seen. As a child, I was on a military base, so we were always being attacked with something or other, and consistency and everything was always up the swanny. Now I seem to have a colour and a consistency that is very steady. There is no particular change from day to day, and pretty healthy. I was debating about whether to go into smell, but I do think that that is also a really good indication that what is coming out of your bowel is from a relatively healthy gut. So the lack of notable pungent smell means that there is no excess bacterial growth there, that everything is kind of working as it should do. You shouldn't really stink out an entire bathroom or a house. So that's one thing that I've noticed. I'm sorry to go into so much detail that I was wondering whether I should include this, but I do think it is important that those 3 things, the consistency, the colour and the smell, are really good markers for either a really upset gut or a very healthy gut. And the only thing that I have changed in my diet is cutting out any grains, any carbs. So even gluten-free pasta has corn in it. It might also have rice in it. And we know that rice is already earmarked as being high in arsenic. But all of these grains are high in a small compound called a disulfide bridge. So arsenic is attracted to sulfur, and it is particularly tied to 2 sulfurs together. So disulfide bridges are present in all grains, in the storage protein and in the actual grain itself. If there is going to be high arsenic in any food that we put in our bodies, then the highest, I should imagine, is going to be in grains. Now, even if those grains adhere to the, 10 parts per million cap that a lot of countries have, I still think that 10 parts per million, if you're having, 10 pieces of bread a day and you're also being bombarded from the air by arsine gas, then that is going to completely overload your liver. So when the lightning comes along, you're going to be even less able to deal with the toxic load that your body is having to cope with, which is why when lightning comes, very often people will get a very upset and loose bowel. So anyway, enough about the poop talk. I think that makes things very clear. If you want to discuss anything more about which foods have these disulfide bridges, we can tell you more or less which ones have more and which ones have fewer. By the way, beans and seeds also have quite high disulfide bridges. So that includes soya, and it includes all of those seeds like sunflower seed that everybody tells us that we shouldn't be eating. And it's not because, seed oils, it's not seed oils in general. It is just because the disulfide bridges in these seeds attract arsenic. And so as arsenic seems to be ubiquitous around the world at the moment, nowhere seems to be escaping. Some places get less than other places, but generally as it is flowing on the jet stream, pretty much everywhere is being covered. I think South America and Africa may have been escaping to some extent. and possibly China because it's very large. It takes quite a lot to cover large areas in those countries. And it's the same with any large country, that usually the gassing goes on over the areas of highest population, so where the big cities are and where the big transit areas are, so where there are big motorway exchanges and stuff. Also on borders, we've noticed a lot of activity on borders to countries and a lot of gassing activity over areas with fault lines. Somebody asked me today, why does France not seem to get as much gas? They get loads of lightning, by the way, from the Atlantic. They don't get a lot of gas, number one, because if they got gas to the same level we are in the UK, they'd be really in trouble because they get a lot of the lightning, but also because there aren't any fault lines over most of France. Most of the fault lines are in the south, near Marseille, or in the north, near the eastern border or under Paris, and right up in the northwest in the Brittany area. So that's where the fault lines are, and that is where we see the gassing largely, which is very interesting because it confirms the point that we've been making, that a lot of the gassing seems to go on when there are potentially troops underground in these fault lines. Now, I do think that the pattern is very, very clear. And I think I'm going to have to cover this in a lot more detail in a video behind paywalls so that the theory can be laid out in detail before we condense it down into something more bite-sized. So anyway, that's it for the update today, and I hope you enjoy listening to this audio. Because I'm not referring to pictures, it's going to be easier for you to ingest. If you're kind of driving along in the car, you can listen to it like you do the radio. And as we go on, hopefully I will be able to put more information in. I'll get more practiced at getting it right quicker without having to do retakes. The aim of the game is to get you as much information as possible that's critical to now, and explain a little bit more about the stuff that I'm working on behind the scenes and how it ties in with what's going on around the world. Have a great rest of the weekend.